Greetings, book lovers everywhere. I'm E-Train and welcome to E-Train Talks, where I discuss everything books. Today I'm excited to be talking with C.W. Allen, author of the mystery adventure series Relatively Normal Secrets, published by Cinnabar Moth. I've read both Relatively Normal Secrets and the sequel, C.W.'s newest novel, which just came out a couple days ago, The Secret Benefits of Invisibility. Ooh. I'm going to be asking CW about the first book in the series today, and hopefully she'll share a little bit about the secret benefits of invisibility as well. And now, without further ado, thank you so much for joining me today, CW. I'm excited to ask you some questions and learn a lot about the book industry.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be on.
So I know that you do a lot to promote literacy. You're part of the League of Utah Writers, you're an author, and you're a great force for readers and authors all over just by being on Twitter and Instagram and just promoting literacy. And that's what I love seeing from authors and just book enthusiasts in general, because we need to lift each other up on social media and not bring each other down. So you're a really positive force, and I'm grateful for all that you do to promote literacy.
Thank you. Yeah, literacy is a huge part of my life as an author, of course. But also, one of my favorite memories of my childhood, and I want to be able to bring that positive experience to other children as well.
And you certainly brought me a positive experience from reading your novels and just your Twitter in general. It's a very positive space. And just a brief summary of her novels. The Relatively Normal Secrets book series is a collection of fantasy fiction stories with mysterious twists. They feature two strong and entertaining protagonists, siblings, Tuesday and Zed. These books are fun, engaging, and unpredictable. To learn more, be sure to read CW's thrilling middle grade book series. And now, that leads me to our first question of the day. So, Relatively Normal Secrets was quite a fast-paced, fun read. It's a mystery that kept my interest until the end. Are you a big mystery fan? And were there any books that you used for inspiration for the Relatively Normal Secrets series, CW?
Yes, I am a huge mystery fan. So you're going to find this kind of funny, but my favorite author when I was about 12 was Agatha Christie, who writes for adults. And I think at the time I just had a lot of trouble finding books that filled that niche for me of being unpredictable and having clues that you could solve as you went along, but were directed at children. There's a middle grade literature renaissance going on right now, and I'm so glad today's kids have more choices than I did. So I loved Agatha Christie. Probably the book that I was most in conversation with while writing my own books is Ellen Raskin's The Westing Game, which was the 1978 Newbery Prize winner. And it was my favorite book at that age. It's probably still my favorite book. And I just loved the way the reader really got to be into more than one character's head, that it was a kind of a universal omniscient point of view, and the opportunities that allowed for a mystery to bounce the characters' different perspectives off of each other. And so the reader had the sense of dramatic irony, that they could see the way the characters were misunderstanding each other or the different thoughts they had about the same experience. So I really wanted to incorporate that into my book, as well as just that general sense of having clues that the reader can solve as they go along and feel smart when they get to the end and go, oh, I figured it out, I knew what was going to happen, or be very surprised at the end and go, oh, I didn't see that coming. I really wanted to have that sense of fun and excitement in my own writing.
And your novel really was fun and exciting. It's also really interactive with the audience. I tried to figure out the clues, and maybe I did find the answers, or maybe I didn't. Either way, I was surprised and excited when I found out the ending. And also, I think you're right, because for a while there wasn't really a genre of middle grade. It kind of went from young children's to young adult. There wasn't really that in between for middle graders like me. So I think that now I'm just so grateful that there are more options and so many different genres for the middle grade people and kids like me. And I think it kind of all started with some great mysteries and some great fantasy books. And it keeps going.
Yeah, I love that you use the word in between, because I think that is just, a magical reader age where you don't have the drama and the romance and all of that of young adult writing, but have obviously moved up from the things that young children care about, and that provides so many interesting opportunities for the characters.
It definitely does. And that leads me to my next question. I liked how the protagonists in Relatively Normal Secrets, Tuesday and Zed, were curious about their parents' past and used their imaginations to try and come up with answers to their questions, which is really great because we can still use our imaginations when we're middle graders. And no matter how old you are, you still can use your imagination. So Zed and Tuesday were very determined. And which character in Relatively Normal Secrets do you think you relate to the most?
I think I probably relate most to Zed's point of view, that he's very quiet, thoughtful, analytical. He wants to kind of write things down and think about them before jumping to a conclusion. And so that was really interesting to be able to contrast his point of view with Tuesday's, she's brash and bold, and she kind of acts before she thinks, and or maybe thinks while talking. And so it was interesting to contrast their different strengths.
It really was interesting to read. And I can also relate to Zed in a way because I think I'm kind of in between. Like we said, like there's an in between kind of point. I think that I'm like Tuesday. I'm super curious. And I sometimes speak before I start thinking about what I'm going to say. But you also have to look on an analytical side of things. And yeah, I really liked how you compared and contrasted Zed and Tuesday's points of view, but they're also siblings and they're connected in a way. They still believe the same things, though they might not be as, oh, our parents are aliens. And so like I think that you really did a great job of kind of finding that middle point, which I like seeing in middle grade because middle grade, well, it's in the name. It's the middle grades.
Thank you. Yeah, a lot of the kids' books from when I was young, like say the Boxcar Children series, were very written from an adult's point of view and that how they wanted children to think. They wanted the siblings to get along and be sweet and cheerful all the time. And that's just not reality, you know? I have siblings, I have children who are siblings, and I know that at the end of the day they love each other, but there's still some conflict there.
Yeah, there's always going to be conflict, and there's no perfect siblings. And that's what I just really love. And now that there's the middle grade genre, I think that it's just really great because it's kind of telling the truth because there's no perfect siblings, as I said. And yeah, the middle grade genre does a great job of depicting the real siblings. Like there aren't perfect siblings who always get along. There's going to be drama, there's going to be fights. And yeah, we can't really write because that's just a fantasy. Siblings are never going to get along, no matter how old they are.
Exactly. I still have wonderful relationships with my siblings as an adult. I love hanging out with them, but that doesn't mean that we agree about everything or get along. And I think when in literature we try to portray that ideal as reality, it makes people feel like if they ever do have conflict, that they're doing something wrong, that this isn't normal. And that's just not the way relationships are.
Yeah, that's really true. You're right about that. And now that's kind of a segue to my next question. It's kind of I think that Relatively Normal Secrets, that's a great title. But I don't really understand why you chose it. So why did you choose it?
Boy, I got to tell you, titling a book is hard.
It is.
Through a lot of different options as I wrote the whole book before I settled on a title. And I went through a lot of different options of I wanted something that would kind of capture the feel, the vibe of the book, but also describe its theme a little bit. And I think it came down to that what Tuesday wants the most in the world is to be normal. And she's kind of blaming her parents for making her life difficult. Everything that she feels like is not normal is kind of because of their choices. And so it wrapped in really well with the theme of the book about families learning to trust each other. I think that's kind of a normal experience that all kids go through, to see their parents for the first time as people rather than just authority figures. But at the same time, adults need to see children as people and not, be keeping things from them. They need to be willing to be real instead of just being an authority figure. And so a lot of the theme of the book was bringing those two ideas together and the reconciliation and trust that's required there.
So titles really do mean a lot for books. And now I can kind of see like they're relatively normal, like so they think, but there are also a lot of secrets being kept. And I think that's a great compare and contrast. Like it's just really true because we shouldn't keep secrets from each other. But I mean, there are going to be secrets kept. That's relatively normal.
It is, yeah. Tuesday finds out as she goes along that what normal means is different to different people, and things that seem very strange to her are normal within the world of Fallenheim. And so it's all about perspective as well.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I read that you have a couple picture books in the works. I did not know that until I did some research on you. I checked out your website and more about you on your Twitter. So, can you share a bit about your picture books, without spoiling them, of course, and why you decided to write for a younger audience?
So I should clarify, these are not books that are in production right now. They're things that I would like to see published in the future. So one is kind of a kid's potty training book. It's called Bear Underwear Extraordinaire. And you can imagine being the size of a bear, finding underwear that fits is going to be a challenge. And so the bear character is going through lots of different options to find the ones that are just right for him. So that's kind of, silly and goofy. And then I have another one that's called The Moon Always Comes Back. And it's more lyrical, thoughtful, kind of a bedtime book. And it compares the relationships with the people that a child loves with the moon, and the way the moon, it's sometimes out during the day, it's sometimes out during the night, sometimes it's a new moon and it's not there, sometimes it's covered by the clouds, but it's on a cycle, it will always come back. And so comparing that to the relationships in a child's life, that even though we have to be separated sometimes, the love is constant and remains, and those people will come back. So I'm working on trying to find the right publishing home for those. And I wanted to experiment with picture books after having tried middle grade, just because, I enjoy them, reading them as an adult still, that I think it's such a beautiful art form to be able to take a story and condense it down into so few words. And when you have so few words to work with, every single word counts. So it's like trying to write a whole novel onto a sticky note, to distill the story you're trying to tell down to its bare essence. I wanted to give that a try.
So picture book agents and young readers publishers, you need to publish these books. They're great and they sound amazing. And I've noticed a lot of comparing and contrasting in your books, CW, and that's something that I love seeing in authors' works, because comparing and contrasting, there's always going to be differences. We're all going to be different in ways, but we're also always going to come together. And like through relationships as with family, with friends, all these different relationships, we're going to compare and contrast. There's going to be a new moon at times. You might be separated, but the moon's always going to be full again.
I think children are so talented at seeing that perspective as well, comparing one thing to another, whereas adults tend to be very literal and just see things the way they are. So I wanted to connect with children in that comparative way.
Thank you. And now that leads me to my next question. So the Secret Benefits of Invisibility, the sequel to Relatively Normal Secrets, just celebrated its book birthday yesterday. Woo!
Thank you.
So congratulations. That's a huge accomplishment. And I loved the sequel. And I know that everybody listening, you need to order a copy. It's so great. So can you share the emotions that you felt in the coming days before your book release?
I think mainly I was just excited when my first book, Relatively Normal Secrets, came out. It was a new experience for me. It was the first book I had ever published. I felt like I kind of had to convince people to give it a try. And now that this is the second book in a series, I already have people that are invested in Zed and Tuesday as characters. They want to know what happens to them. And so that's just very exciting for me to be able to kind of share my imaginary friends with everybody else.
It does sound like a very exciting time, and I hope that one day I'll be able to take part in that exciting time with the book that I hope to publish one day. And I think, so I know that that's probably a very exciting time. I saw your tweets in a little thread, just 5 days, 4 days, that countdown. It must feel like you're just anticipating that Tuesday, June 7th, when your book releases. It just sounds like such a fun and exciting time. Although it can also be a little bit nerve-wracking, I've heard.
A little bit, yeah, because publishing is a business as well as writing is an art. There is some pressure to feel like that you have met your readers' expectations as well as your publisher's expectations. So yeah, that's reality. It can be a little bit nerve-wracking. Also, writing is just very personal to let people into your own thoughts and feelings. So it can feel very vulnerable sometimes to let people into your inner world. So that's something I've had to kind of come to terms with, but I think I'm through that and just excited to share.
Yeah, and I really understand that. Like when you post something on Twitter, like that's what I'm doing. I haven't really written a book yet. It's kind of like you can feel vulnerable because people are kind of getting, what if they don't like what you're doing? But you also have to remember that there are going to be people that do approve of what you're doing, that they're supportive. And I think that it really relates to writing books because there are always going to be people who may not like your book as much, but there are also always going to be people on your side rooting for you. And you have to remember that. Don't always look on the bright side because there's always a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yes, exactly. I would be so devastated if the authors of my favorite books had been too scared to publish them. They're such an important part of my life. And so it doesn't matter that a book may not be for everyone. It was important to me. So I hope I can provide that experience for someone else. It's also really important that we see each other as people, not just as this vague, faceless person behind the page. So kids need to recognize that adults still feel nervous and vulnerable sometimes, and that's okay. That's normal.
Yeah. And I know that you do a lot to promote literacy, as I've said. And your website says that you've done a lot. So you're a chapter president and newsletter editor for the League of Utah Writers. So would you share what the League of Utah Writers really is?
Yeah, so the League of Utah Writers is my state's local professional writers organization, and they have kind of two focuses. The first is to help writers, the writers that are their members, both improve their craft, get to meet each other, be able to critique each other's works, meet other people in the professional publishing industry, but then also to reach out to the community, to provide literacy opportunities within the community, to make sure that stories that aren't traditionally told are being given their chance. So yeah, it's been really rewarding to be part of an organization that gives back.
So what exactly is a chapter president?
So I lead a writers group for just people in my town because the League of Utah Writers covers the entire state, and we have members outside the state as well. And then so a chapter president, I focus just within my town. So we have maybe a dozen people that are all writers, and we come together and share the things we're working on, give each other critique, lead classes about ways that we can improve, try to help promote each other's work. So it's a support organization, and it's helped me meet so many other people that I didn't know were writers, that people even within my town that I would not have met otherwise. So it's been a really rewarding experience.
So I'll be sure to keep following the League of Utah Writers and see that just keep watching all you do to promote literacy. And I think that's really cool. And maybe once COVID's over, you all go to each other's houses and critique each other. That sounds like a very fun experience.
Mostly we do that online because it's easier to read than it is when you're giving detailed feedback. But yeah, it's writing can feel very lonely sometimes. It's not something that everybody really understands, that perspective. And so it's wonderful to be able to associate with other people that are also interested in that and really get it.
Yeah. And I know that of course we live in a writing world where you can write for many different genres. But this is a question that I like asking. So I know that you write for more than one audience. I've been able to discuss that with other authors and artists, and they've had mixed answers. So here's a bit of a fun question. If from today forward you could only write for one age group, which age range would you choose?
For me, it would absolutely be middle grade. I do enjoy having varied projects in other genres, but I think the middle grade audience is just so magical to be able to still have some challenges. Kids can't organize their own schedules, their own transportation. They don't have their own money. Sometimes they just have to do what they're told to do. And so that creates some really interesting hurdles for the characters. But it also, there's also this magical part of being in that in-between age where you're old enough to kind of have your own adventures and go do some things independently, but still young enough to see the world in a unique light, to not be as literal and focused as adults are, and be open to new expectations, new opportunities. So I have kind of a mantra for my writing that I want my stories to be ones where kids succeed because they're kids rather than in spite of it. I don't want my characters to need a lot of help. I don't want it to be like, well, an adult could have done this better, but we're going to see if we can pull it off. I want to celebrate the unique solutions that a middle grade reader or character would come up with, because I think that's just such a magical age. Middle grade readers are idealistic and courageous and imaginative, and I want to celebrate those things.
Yeah, I really agree. And another great thing about middle grade is that it can appeal to a wide audience. And it can also kind of teach adults who read middle grade to not just be so literal all the time, because this is a world still. It's a world that you can explore and that you can just imagine, because you still have imaginations, even if you have a lot of work to do. So it's just middle grade is an outlet to other worlds, and it can kind of teach you new things that you thought you had forgotten, and it can also teach you new techniques that you haven't yet learned. So it's really that in-between age. And I think that you found a really safe space. Like middle grade, it's kind of the perfect genre. And I mean, I know that I'm a middle graders and I also promote middle grade. That's kind of what I do. But I'm not just saying that. Middle grade is still it's an amazing genre. And like you said, it's a magical time being in the in-between zone.
You're so right. There are a lot of adults that do read middle grade, and with good reason. There are just so many opportunities for plots and themes that don't fit in any other genre. And I hope that, as well as helping middle grade readers feel seen and understood, that I can help the adults that read it appreciate children for their unique qualities.
Yeah, I think that's so great what you're doing. And now we're getting into a little bit of a zone where audience can participate as well. So, at what was there one point in your life where you knew that you wanted to be a writer? And also, is writing your main focus, or do you have other jobs that you work on as well?
Yeah, I think I always did want to be a writer, but I felt quite intimidated about it. When we would have like author visits come to my school, or when I would read people's finished books, it just felt, so finished and already successful. And so when I tried my own writing, I felt like, well, this isn't finished. It isn't easy. I had this idea that the perfect story would just spill out onto the page completely in completely finished form. And because I couldn't do that, I thought, well, maybe I'm not good enough to make it as an author. And it took me a long time to realize that even my favorite writers have to go through many drafts and struggle and try a lot of different things and write words that they're going to end up erasing, and that it's okay for it to be a long and involved process. And once I understood that, I realized that it didn't matter if my work was coming out the way I wanted it to the first time, that it was going to take some work and some finesse to mold it into the form I wanted, and that was okay. What was the second part of your question?
The second part was, is writing your main focus, or do you have any other side jobs that you focus on?
Oh, okay, yes. So I homeschool my three children, and I think that is just the perfect job to dovetail with writing, because especially writing for children, because it keeps me in the mode of a child's perspective and priorities. It keeps me very connected with them. It's also just a lot of fun to be able to spend all day focusing on the things that they're interested in and they care about. And I've learned so much through that process. So I give some of my time to both, but I think they're jobs that work perfectly together.
They do work perfectly together. And I've talked with some other authors who homeschool their kids, and it's really great. And like you can spend a lot of time with your audience, and you learn a lot from just being a homeschool teacher and like kind of seeing what your kids are going through. So I think that can really help you as a writer. And also, I think that writing can be really intimidating as well. I've interviewed so many authors, but I still feel intimidated. Like that's a whole book. And it's even more intimidating knowing you may do like 10 drafts of that same story. So it can feel really intimidating at times, but it's also great to know that you powered through. And there are people just like you who are in the same struggle or who have had the same struggle, just feeling intimidated, being a kid like, whoa, I want to be a writer, but I don't want to do all that work. But you come to realize that it's a struggle, but it's going to be great. It's going to be a fun experience.
Yeah, one of my favorite mantras is to not give up on a dream because of the time it will take, because the time will pass anyway. So yeah, it takes a long time to write a whole book, but it's just, a few words every day. The author Neil Gaiman is famous for a quote that says he wrote Coraline at 50 words a day because he was working on other projects at the time, and that's all the time he had. So it adds up. It's worth it.
Yeah, it really does add up. And this is kind of an add-on to the same question. Was there someone who inspired you to pursue writing? A parent, a teacher, an author, or role model?
There's no one specific person. My parents and my teachers, as I was growing up, always complimented my writing ability, and so that was encouraging to feel like, okay, yeah, I maybe have a talent for this. I might be able to work at it some more. But also the books that I enjoy reading were very inspirational to me. A lot of the reason I want to write is because the books I read at that age contributed so much to the person I've become that it's a privilege to be able to kind of pass along the favor, to contribute to that body of work for other readers. So other authors have definitely been inspirational to me.
Yeah, it really is inspirational. And I know that all of us writers have inspirations. And the one thing that separates writers from people who want to be writers is like, do you want to do all the work? Do you want to like put in hours and hours of writing, sitting at your computer, just brainstorming, maybe not writing a single word in an entire hour? Are you willing to do that? So just having all these inspirations, it's just a really great experience and it really helps. So now it's time for a little bit more of a fun question. If you were trapped on a deserted island and could only bring one book or book series, which book would it be and why? Also, please don't choose a desert survival guide.
That's kind of a cop-out, isn't it? Yeah,
Yeah.
this is an interesting question because, both readers and writers would agree we want all that variety. Having to stick with just one is kind of torturous.
Mhm.
I think I would probably pick the Green Glass House series by Kate
Oh,
Miller.
yeah.
So they are fantastic mysteries, which is my first love, but also because the whole series is connected, they all kind of take place in this. It's a fictional place, but it's sort of like Earth. But well, I mean, I guess it's probably on Earth, but like it's sort of like a real place, but not exactly. There's kind of some magical realism to it. And all her books, even if they take place in different time periods, are all connected to that place. So that would give me a lot of different variety of reading. Also, some of her books have this story within a story device where the characters are reading the works of literature of their world. So that would give me lots of different variety within a single series.
Yeah. The Green Glass House series is great. I read it for a book club and I read the first book, and it was a really great experience because it was just such a great book and it's a great book series. And now, unfortunately, that leads us to our final question of the day. This was such a great experience chatting with you. And this is a question I like to ask every single one of my guests. And I always receive different answers, and they're all great answers. So if you could be or meet any literary character, fictional or real, any period in history, who would you want to meet or be and why?
Okay, this is a fascinating question. So one of my children's favorite book series is the Nanny Piggins series by Australian author R.A. Spratt. And I think I would like to meet Nanny Piggins. She is just kind of wild and outrageous and throws all the rules out the window and bakes chocolate cake and eats it at every hour of the day. So it might be a little bit exhausting being with her, but I think getting to meet her just once would be fun. She's kind of like an anti Mary Poppins, that instead of telling the kids that she's in charge of how to do everything, they sometimes have to hold her back and go, whoa, Nanny Piggins, that's not how we do that. You can't bite people on the shins, and you can't blast yourself out of a cannon, and we can't eat cake for every single meal of the day, and we do have to go to school. So I think she would just be a lot of fun to be with.
That sounds like a lot of fun. And I know it would be a very fun experience, but also I think that we would all get very sick eating cake for every meal. So that would be fun for like the first few days, but our stomachs would not really take that.
I don't think I would want her as my nanny, but it would be fun
Yeah.
to me.
The first few hours would be very fun.
Yes.
Except the shin kicking part.
Well, as long as you don't insult her, she's not going to bite shins.
Yeah.
So all right.
So I really appreciate all of your thoughtful answers, and I'm so glad you were able to come and talk with me today, CW. I know it's a very exciting and busy time for you with your book launch of The Secret Benefits of Invisibility, and of course, all the amazing things that you do to promote literacy. And I know that you have a lot of writing in the works, and you're working to get your picture books published. So keep going on that. They sound like super great ideas. I'll be sure to help you and promote all that you do as much as I can through my Twitter and Instagram and my social media. And yeah, just thank you so much for joining me. And for those of you listening, I highly recommend getting your hands on a copy of The Secret Benefits of Invisibility, Relatively Normal Secrets, and everything that CW does as a writer. And feel free to listen to my book review of Relatively Normal Secrets. It's on my podcast. Just scroll down on Spotify and you'll be able to find it. And follow CW Allen on social media, at Seawallen Books on Twitter, and the same for Instagram, and to keep up with their writing journey. And it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on my podcast today, CW. I hope you'll come back and talk books with me again sometime.
Thank you so much for the invitation. This has been wonderful. I'd love to come back anytime.
Yeah, it was a wonderful experience for me too. And that's it for today, everybody. Check out my website, eTrainTalks.com, to find out what's happening next on the eTrain Talks podcast. So keep reading, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, everybody.